Hey, it's great to be back. I had a great week. I was off in Central Oregon. I was hiking with my wife and kayaking. We had a lot of incredible adventures. We were on one trail that didn't exist because it had been snowed under and was closed till June, but we went hiking on it. But the only dangerous thing I did, I actually fell asleep at the wheel for the second time in my life. I fell asleep driving a car. I knew I was dozing off, and I said to my wife, you better talk to me to keep me awake. But my wife has this soothing, sweet voice. You know, she's a psychotherapist. Everything she does is make people feel better. So I just passed out, and she had to punch me. She punched me on the arm, and just barely. I was right on the verge of hitting the divider, and I pulled over into the other lane. It was luckily a cop wasn't watching, but that's the word. I'm hiking in the wilderness, then almost ran off. So I saw rattlesnakes all over the place. But the only thing that I did that was dangerous was fall asleep at the wheel. Knowles.
You're back.
I'm back. I know.
Hey.
I was hiking. I was kayaking. I was driving my car into a divider. I was
Usually these sort of things, like falling asleep at the wheel, you know, half hung over, driving off a cliff, that's the sort of thing that I would do. I do not expect this from you, Drew. We almost lost you.
You know, it's hilarious. Ellen and I are so crazy. We do these things like we're in the middle of nowhere. I mean, absolutely nowhere. And weather is moving in. And I'm going like, maybe we shouldn't hike. And Ellen's go, oh, come on. Let's go. So we go off in this hike, and the weather is coming in, and we're fine. And then we went off in this other hike, and Ellen is going, there's no trail, it's covered in snow. And I'm going, oh, come on, let's go. So we go hiking off we're fine, nothing. But we get in the car, like, we were like at an inch from death. You know, all it took was just driving across Oregon, and that's how we almost.
This is true. Like all of my millennial friends, you know, they want to go to bed by 11 o'clock. We got to obey the rules, whatever. The Clavans, though, they're out all night, they're driving, they're skiing, they're whatever, you know.
It's healthy living. And you, sir, are about to become a husband.
I am. I'm working on it. She still has a little while to just scurry away, you know, and leave an Elisa-shaped hole in the wall.
I think Shapiro is outside the window with a ladder, you know.
Yeah. Come on, it's safe. We have a trampoline.
Yeah. But that's exciting. This
coming
is,
up.
yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's very. I've got to get all my bachelordom out of me now, which I may end up like you on your trip, you know, careening somewhere. But hopefully not. Hopefully it'll all go well.
No, it'll be great. It'll be great. Marriage was certainly the making of me, and if anything can be the making of you, it would be Alyssa.
Yeah, that is the best shot. Yeah. The making of me, the unmaking of sweet little Elisa. It's okay. Everything has trade-offs in life.
So I read this piece while I was gone about Watergate, which really I found illuminating at this point in terms of what's going on now. Did you read this in Bloomberg?
Oh, it was so good. This piece. It was making the rounds on the internet. It was so good because in the re-election campaign for Richard Nixon, the slogan was President Nixon, now more than ever. And that's kind of how I feel. Bring it on. Now more than ever. People look at Watergate. They don't realize, first of all, especially on the left, that Watergate was a political struggle. They say, oh, he broke the law. Apparently it's against the law not to tape doors correctly at the Democrat offices. So there was this minor little dirty trick. And they took down the president over it. And they don't realize what a naked political battle this was as well. In 1974, when the House Judiciary Committee voted in favor of 3 articles of impeachment, the Democrats had a majority in the Senate and the House. So when Nixon resigned, he said, I no longer have the political support to maintain my position, right? He knew he was going to be impeached. So there's this political aspect of it as well. But, it was pretty naked power grab, and people have been fighting over this. And it's not like it was some great win for Democrats. They got their president. They finally got Nixon. They stole an election from him in 1960. They'd been trying to get him since he took down Alger Hiss.
That's exactly right. They hated him since that.
They hated him because he was a firm anti-communist, and he was right. And they never forgave him for it. They tried to take him down for decades. They finally got him. And then, so they get him in 1974. What happens 6 years later? We get the Reagan Revolution. This initiated a period really of 28 years of basically conservative governance. I include Clinton in there, 1, because of the Gingrich Revolution, and 2, because we reformed taxes, lowered taxes, we reformed welfare, right, crime bill. It was basically a conservative administration, some decent free trade agreements. So anyway, it was really a Pyrrhic victory for Democrats in 1974. It killed a quarter century for them. And we're seeing these same kind of forces at play again. As they point out in that great Bloomberg article, During the Nixon administration, the Democrat Nixon advisor, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, said that the New York Times and the Washington Post were hostile to the American government and hostile to American society. Talked about how the bureaucrats were working to undermine the president. And everyone said, oh, you're being conspiratorial, you're being crazy, until a bureaucrat turned over classified documents to the New York Times and the Washington Post. What are we seeing today? We're seeing the same thing play out. The media totally against Trump, the bureaucracy against Trump largely, and we're seeing huge overreach here, particularly in this Mueller decision. There was a good piece in the Wall Street Journal by Stephen Calabresi, who
saw that, yeah.
You saw that piece? That was by the former assistant to Ed Meese, AG for Reagan, and law clerk for Scalia. And he said that the Mueller investigation is unconstitutional. It's simply unconstitutional, and it's unconstitutional under the Morrison v. Olson. Not only the dissent in that case, but also the decision. It's actually unconstitutional by both sides. Scalia wrote a great dissent in that case. The case was about, really, in the wake of Watergate, what these special investigators and independent counsels could do, what the scope of their role was.
And whether it was constitutional at all to even have them.
And whether it was constitutional at all. Scalia had a famous dissent where he said this whole thing is unconstitutional. But William Rehnquist, the future great Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, right, he, even in upholding the independent counsel statute, he said that it has very strict limits, that principal officers must be appointed by the president with the Senate's consent. And there's a difference between principal officers and inferior officers. An inferior officer is not subject to Senate approval, has a boss. This would be the role of Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller has a boss. It's Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General. So Rod Rosenstein is a principal officer. Robert Mueller is an inferior officer, and yet Mueller is vastly exceeding the scope of this investigation. This is no longer about Russia collusion. They're getting Manafort for some money laundering. They're indicting whole scores of people for reasons that have nothing to do with the purpose of the independent counsel.
And they clearly haven't got this. They haven't got the Russian collusion. I mean, it's just absurd to think that Trump was like on the phone with Putin, like saying, run some more of those Facebook ads. That's what's going to turn the tide.
That'll get it. Another $100,000 of Facebook ads. I mean, this investigation has now been going on, I think, since the Coolidge administration. They've turned up absolutely nothing. They don't have him, so they're just trying to get him on something, because you can indict a ham sandwich. That's what we're seeing. This is a huge overreach.
In fact, Mueller indicted a ham sandwich, an imaginary ham sandwich. He indicted a Russian company that doesn't even exist. It's like I'm just thinking of a ham sandwich, and he indicted it.
That's right. One of the best Mueller gets is a company that does not exist. That is what a perfect analogy for this investigation. So you look at that, and you look at the legal similarities between Watergate and the Supreme Court decision after Watergate, but you look at the political ramifications. I think this is why you're seeing certain Democrats now saying, well, we're not going to impeach necessarily. Adam Schiff came out and said, we're not exactly looking, because they saw what happened in the wake of Watergate when the bureaucracy and the media team up to overturn an American election. It doesn't work out well for them.
Right. And it's the one thing I always say this about politicians, because people are outside of politics. They're always going, this guy's an idiot. This guy's a fool. The thing is, politicians are good at politics. They are good at politics. When you watch a Major League Baseball team, you are watching the best people who play the game. When you watch the federal government, you are looking at the best politicians in the country. They may not be good people. They may not be good administrators. They may not be good legislators, but they're good at politics. And every single one of the Democrats knows what happened at Watergate. I mean, what happened basically is, I was there. I remember how much they hated Nixon. I mean, it is like Trump. And Nixon was a flawed, like Trump. He's a flawed guy. He did have paranoia. He did have like old-fashioned attitudes about things. But he was a good civil rights president. He was actually kind of a liberal president, too far to the left for me, But he was not somebody. They just hated him personally, and they hated him. You're absolutely right, because Alger Hiss. People don't know this story anymore. Hugh Hewitt, is always quizzing people whether they've heard of Alger Hiss, because it was a huge deal. That this guy, he was upper class, he was sophisticated, and the guy who took him down was a former, communist spy, basically, named Whittaker Chambers, who was fat and grotesque and didn't really fit in with everybody. And so the left just stood up for Alger Hiss, and he was guilty. And Nixon went after him. And by the way, have you ever read Witness? Have you ever read?
Oh, it's one of the great
It's a life-changing book. It is a life-changing book.
Nobody reads it anymore. It is like the must-read, right on that list up there with Edmund Burke or whatever. For American conservatives, it's so good.
I agree. What are you talking about on your show today?
Today, I'm talking about how the kids are all right. You know, obviously during the Klavan-less week, our pal Ben wanted to sound a very pessimistic note and say conservatives.
I knew I shouldn't leave town. He gets like that.
He does get like that sometimes, and about how conservatives are losing the youth, and there are some problems. But I think things are looking great. I think recent polling shows that we're experiencing a cultural shift, and I think the kids are all right. Not the grown-up kids who are these Democrats who cry all the time and yell and shriek, but the actual millennials. I think there's a good chance that just as Ronald Reagan was able to do from 80 to 84, Donald Trump could win over a good segment of the young voters for the Republicans.
You know, I really do think you're right about this, because as I keep saying, reality has a voice. Suddenly these kids are going to have jobs. They're not going to be living in their parents' basement. After Carter, which was just the most depressing period of my lifetime politically, I mean, nobody had a job. People were so unhappy. When Reagan rejiggered the economy and it took off that way, it's like laughing gas, because you not only have the good economy, you have the contrast between the kind of Obama economy, where it was 1% growth and
the new normal.
The new normal. There's nothing you can do. They did that with Carter too, by the way. You know, it's like the country's ungovernable. It can't be done. It can't be done. And then Reagan was like, oh yeah, I can do this. You know.
I did it.
Exactly. And Trump's the same way. He's like, we can do this. We can do. And I think that the kids are not stupid. They're just inexperienced, and they do see this, and it makes a change. I agree with you about this. I think things are going to be a lot better than we think they are. And if we win this midterm, if the Republicans win this midterm, the resistance is over.
It's over. If that happens, because history is so against us holding the House. If we manage to hold the House somehow, I think I'm going to have to just staple the MAGA hat to my head. I don't get it right in there.
Oh, that sounds like fun. I'll help you with that. All right, sounds like a good show. Thanks a lot, Knowles.
All right, see you, Drew.